Alright my friends, let me show you how this build renders enemies terrified and helpless with laughter on every single attack. We're going to use these handy guards to demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and make a reckless attack against Fist Havard here. If we get a critical hit, he's going to fall over. And if we don't get a critical hit, we can guarantee one with the Killer's Sweetheart or Luck of the Far Realms. We could add a critical hit if we add Divine Smite or Paralyze if we wanted to, but we don't need to because he is struck with hideous laughter and just lying on the ground, unable to fight back against us. We can then do the same thing to his ally or to anybody else that we want to because every single attack, enemies get locked down with this build. Alright, let's get to the build and start clowning on our enemies. Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a build that will make your enemies literally laugh themselves to death, and which for obvious reasons we're calling the Evil Clown. You'll notice that Minthara here is wearing the clown makeup, and that's actually not a joke, that's a very important part of this build, which we'll get to in a minute. This build also does excellent melee damage output, some of the higher available melee damage in the game, and offers solid support spellcasting for when you need that, but the real key feature is that every attack will leave enemies writhing in laughter helplessly on the ground for you to finish them off at your leisure. So if you've ever wanted your enemies to lie awake terrified at night, shivering and chanting "Can't sleep, clowns will eat me," this is the build for you. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Sage of Six Paths for the $5 donation, Casey Smith for the $5, and Anthony Faulkner for the extremely generous $50, as well as Thomas Beam and Sloth for becoming channel members. I also want to apologize for being a little behind on thanking people, but I really do appreciate the support. Thank you so much, my friends. It really does mean a lot. Alright, let's get to the build. I'm using Minthara as the example character here because it kind of feels right for the Evil Clown build, and this build does use Paladin levels. It also benefits extremely heavily from illithid powers and is one of the best characters in the game at using illithid powers. So Minthara's head start with bonus illithid powers is very helpful to this character build. But, of course, this build, I think, fits perfectly for a Dark Urge playthrough, so that would be my go-to pick for using this build. You can put it on any character, of course, but a custom Dark Urge character is going to be the most flavorful, and in many ways the most powerful version of this character as well. If you are building it as a custom character, then I recommend Dwergar. It's both the most powerful pick, because of the out-of-combat invisibility, but also incredibly flavorful, approaching enemies invisibly, the echoing sounds of laughter, the only sign of your approach, and the blood-spattered walls, the only sign that you've been there, is a terrifying image and fits extremely well for this character, so Dwergar will enable that. Halfling is also very good for us because we want critical hits. Halflings rerolling natural ones makes you that much more likely to get critical hits and also to land your attacks, so just very good for this character as well. And this character will also benefit from high mental saving throws, so Gnome's advantage on those is good. And of course all the characters that are normally good, Githyanki for the Misty Step and bonus skills, or Wood Elf for the bonus movement speed will work excellently as well. My belief for this character is that it will fit for just about anybody, but a Dark Urge character will get the most benefit out of this build, so that would be where I would go first. Which class we take at our first level is actually a really interesting question. This build is going to use 3 different classes, and there's good arguments for starting with any one of the 3, but the one that I'm going to recommend that you begin with is Barbarian. There's 2 main reasons for this. One, it gets us Constitution save proficiency, and while we won't be concentrating on spells in every fight, because a lot of fights we're going to be raging and thus unable to concentrate on spells, there are plenty of fights where concentrating on Hunger of Hadar or Darkness is the right move, and being better at maintaining concentration on our spells is going to be really, really useful, so Barbarian lets us do that more easily. The second is that Barbarian just starts with extra hit points, and this is a melee build. Those extra hit points can be very handy, especially in the early game, so starting with Barbarian just makes our early game a little bit smoother. For our ability score selection though, we're taking a very unusual split for Barbarians, because we want to get our Charisma as high as possible, since we'll be attacking using our Charisma primarily. I'm going to recommend that this character use Anti-Ethel's Deal in order to be able to start with 17 charisma and get to 18 without having to spend a feat. It's not mandatory to do it this way, but this character will be significantly stronger if you do that, because you can get better feats as a result of being able to use Ethel's Hair in order to hit 20 charisma while only spending 1 ASI. So that is going to be the optimal stat spread for the character, starting with 17 charisma. If you don't want to use Ethel's Hair on this character, you can start with 16, but the default is going to be starting with 16 dexterity, 17 charisma, and 14 constitution. We start with slightly lower constitution than dexterity because having high dexterity lets us use finesse weapons in the early game before we get Pact of the Blade Warlock online, so that's going to let us hit our attacks more often. And also, this character won't have room for alert in the build, so any bonus to initiative that we can get from our stats is going to be massively useful, since initiative is so important to every character in Baldur's Gate 3. Put our last 2 points in wisdom just to make us a little better at passing wisdom saving throws. And for our skills, we're going to make sure that we have intimidation, because this character will actually be a good party face. For one thing, we're going to max out our charisma, so we're excellent at passing charisma-based skill checks. And for another, we have both barbarian and paladin levels on this character. And those both give you special dialogue options in a lot of dialogues. So being able to use those special paladin and barbarian dialogue options, which often have much lower difficulty classes than the normal dialogue checks, will give you a lot of opportunities to succeed in conversations that you wouldn't have on another character. If you take a background that gets you persuasion, that's also very nice, because persuasion is always really good, but the main one that you want to start with is intimidation. Perception, of course, is also very important for this character. That's it for level 1. Let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we're immediately going to multiclass out of Barbarian and start taking levels of Warlock. Warlock is going to be part of the core combo for this build, and also, of course, gets us Pact of the Blade Warlock, allowing us to attack using our very high charisma. This character wants high charisma for the save DCs on our spells, the save DCs on our effects, and to attack, so Pact of the Blade Warlock lets us be basically single attribute dependent, or sad, which is a good thing, especially when you're an evil clown. Laughing on the outside, crying on the inside is the classic for clowns. So it makes even more sense to build a sad character here. For our cantrip selection, of course, we are going to be taking Eldritch Blast. This gives us an excellent ranged option for whenever we're not in rage. And we're going to take Minor Illusion, being able to group enemies up for our AoE spells, or lure them off into the darkness on their own to pick them off one by one. Incredibly flavorful for the evil clown, of course, are very, very important options to have available for this character. For our subclass here, we're going to take the Great Old One. This character is going to be built around landing critical hits. Every time we critically hit with our weapon, enemies are going to be having to make a saving throw or be left laughing helplessly on the ground. Adding Great Old One in adds an additional debilitating status effect every time we get a critical hit, so enemies will now have to save against Tasha's Hideous Laughter and against becoming frightened. And either one of those is a devastating condition to apply, so every crit we get is going to disable the entire encounter very easily, and this character can lock down enemies extremely powerfully. This also gives us a really powerful option in the early game, just Eldritch Blasting with Mortal Reminder and causing enemies to be frightened and unable to get to us, makes us a really powerful ranged attacker. For our spell selection here, we're going to go with Dissonant Whispers and Hex. Hex is great for our early game damage and will remain relevant up until the late game, even though in some of these encounters we're going to be raging. Concentrating on Hex also increases your damage dramatically, and in the early game it's really, really useful. Later on we'll swap it out for a different spell probably. And Dissonant Whispers is the best early combat spell for Warlocks. We have high charisma, so enemies will fail that saving throw, and become frightened, which of course is very thematic for the character, but also will let us just pick them off at range very easily. That gives us the best setup for level 1, or level 2, with our first level of Warlock, so let's move on to level 3. At level 3, we're taking our second Warlock level, and getting additional spell access and additional invocations. For our spell selection here, we're going to take Armor of Agathis. This is just a really useful one to have for any melee character, giving you a little bit of a buffer. Also later, when we're raging more often, having Armor of Agathis as a defensive option is nice because it doesn't require concentration or spell casting, so it lets us use our spell slots effectively without having to actually cast them during combat. For our invocations here, of course, we're going to take Agonizing Blast to increase the damage of our Eldritch Blast, and Devil's Sight, because both of these effects are just so powerful that there are very few Warlocks that don't want to start with these two invocations. Being able to just hide in a cloud of darkness and fire Eldritch Blasts is such a powerful strategy, there's no reason not to take these two on almost any character. We don't need to replace any spells here because we already took the perfect spells, so let's go to level 4. And at character level 4, we are taking our third level of Warlock. This gets us level 2 spells, and of course, the level 2 spell that we are going to take is going to be Darkness. We can now replace Hex with Cloud of Daggers or Misty Step, and I'm going to recommend replacing Hex with Cloud of Daggers in this case, because you would rather usually concentrate on Cloud of Daggers than concentrate on Hex in any given combat. It's just usually more powerful if you're concentrating on a spell. In a lot of these combats, we won't be concentrating on a spell because we'll now be attacking with our weapon and raging in order to do more weapon damage. But for combats where we do want a concentration option, Cloud of Daggers, I think, is usually more powerful than Hex. This character actually swaps out its spells a lot because the playstyle of the character changes a lot over the course of the 12 levels. So we're going to be making a lot of changes here every time we level up. For our Pact boon, of course, we already talked about this, we're going to take the Pact of the Blade, allowing us to make melee attacks using our high charisma. This means that now our spell attacks, our Eldritch Blast shots, and our weapon attacks are all based around our charisma, as are the save DCs of the Great Old One Fear, the Warlock Fear feature that causes enemies to become frightened, and a lot of the save DCs of our other things as well. We will also keep charisma as our casting stat throughout the throughout the build. So our Illithid powers are going to be based on charisma. How Illithid powers choose their save DCs is it's based on the last class that you took the first level of, the last class that you took level 1 in. We're going to make sure that that's still a charisma class, so our Illithid powers and scrolls and items that we use will also use our charisma for save DCs, allowing this character to be a really excellent caster with scrolls, and a really, really powerful character to use Illithid powers, which it uses better than almost any other character in the game. At character level 5, we're going to take our 4th level of Warlock. We could exit Warlock at this point to pick up other character classes, but I think Warlock still just gives us so much that we want to continue to level in Warlock, getting an additional cantrip, and of course our first feat. For our cantrip selection here, you can take Friends to be a better party face. Even on Honor mode, Friends is still very, very useful. You can take Blade Ward because as a melee character, there will often be times when you're surrounded by enemies. Having Blade Ward as a panic button to give you damage resistance to physical damage can be helpful, although of course this character is a barbarian and we'll get that from entering a rage as well, so it's a little less useful for this character. Or of course we could take True Strike to annoy people in the YouTube comments. I'm going to recommend actually taking Friends because we do have useful cantrip picks to grab now, so we're not going to spend one on True Strike. I know that's going to make everyone sad, but I would rather recommend things that will actually help when you're playing through the character in this spot. For our spell selection here, we can take Hold Person or Misty Step. Either of these are going to be really good. Hold Person guarantees us critical hits if we land it, because whenever you attack an enemy, it guarantees a critical hit against them. That is going to trigger the Fear from Great Old One Warlock, and of course trigger the Hideous Laughter from our weapon, which will be very helpful. Less helpful against an enemy that's already disabled by Hold Person, but still very useful. So I'm going to recommend taking that. We could, at this point, also swap out one of our spells. If you find that you are not using one of these spells, you could swap it out for Misty Step to have an additional mobility option. But all 4 of those spells I'm very happy with at the moment, so I wouldn't swap one of them out, unless you find there's one you're really not using. For For our feat selection, we have a bunch of different options as well here, all of which are good. We could of course just take an ability improvement, increase our charisma, increase our Eldritch Blast damage, our chance to hit, and our save DCs. We could take alert, which is always excellent on honor mode. But what I'm going to recommend is that you take Great Weapon Master. We're going to build heavily around dealing critical hit damage on this character, around landing critical hits, and Great Weapon Master gives us a bunch of awesome effects on a critical hit based character. Firstly, of course, we are using a two-handed weapon, landing a critical, doing 10 extra damage with our two-handed weapon increases our damage output dramatically. Secondly, this character doesn't have great uses for its bonus actions by default. Great Weapon Master gives us an incredible use for our bonus action. We're going to be critically hitting pretty much every turn, so that's going to be just a full extra attack that we're getting every turn, where we critical hit or kill an enemy, which will be pretty much always. And finally, on builds that are based around dealing critical hits, the -5 attack penalty from Great Weapon Master is much less impactful. In Baldur's Gate 3, if you roll a critical hit, it automatically hits an enemy regardless of their armor class or your hit bonus. So this attack roll penalty from Great Weapon Master is much less impactful on crit builds than it is on any other type of character. So this character not only uses Great Weapon Master really effectively, it also suffers less from the downsides than any other character will, making it one of the best builds to use Great Weapon Master on. So that's the feat that we're going to take here. At level 6, we're taking our 5th level of Warlock because that gets us extra attack. That, of course, doubles our damage output and our chance of critically hitting in a turn, making us even better at landing our disabling effects. Extra attack, obviously, we all know how good extra attack is. I don't really need to spend a lot of time belaboring the point, but doubling your damage output is, of course, incredible. For our spell selection at this level, we're going to pick up Counterspell. Counterspell, of course, is really important. This character won't end up with high-level spell slots, so your Counterspell will only be reliable against third-level spells, but this gives us an amazing thing to do to protect ourselves, and a great use for our reaction, and the counterspells will still sometimes work against higher level spells, but mostly you want to try to use this against third level spells or lower on this character. It's just too good to pass up on in order to pass up on it. We can also replace a spell here. We're going to replace Cloud of Daggers because we have a better concentration spell, and that concentration spell, of course, is Hunger of Hadar, which just wins encounters all by itself. Hunger of Hadar is just so powerful that it can often be worth not fighting in melee combat for an encounter, just to land Hunger on a big group of enemies, and then fire Eldritch Blasts for the rest of that encounter. Enemies who are frightened by our Great Old One Warlock passive, our Gulock passive, are going to be stuck in the Hunger of Hadar, constantly taking the damage, and blinded enemies we have advantage on attacks against, making us that much more likely to critically hit. For our Eldritch Invocation here, we're going to take Repelling Blast, giving us the ability to push enemies away from us, back into our Hungers of Hadar, off cliffs and stuff like that. Being able to reposition enemies is always super excellent, so Repelling Blast, always great. Now that we have extra attack and third level spells from Warlock, we've gotten most of what we want from our Warlock levels, so we are free to continue to level up in the other classes that we want. Here, we're going to go back and take a second level of Barbarian, because that gets us Reckless Attack. This character wants to get critical hits very, very frequently, and the best way to get guaranteed critical hits, or extremely reliable critical hits, is to attack with advantage all the time. Reckless Attack just lets us do that, so whenever we attack, we can have advantage, making us significantly more likely to critically hit. This character should critically hit on a 16 or higher if you're not the Dark Urge, or a 14 or higher if you are the Dark Urge, meaning that when you're attacking with advantage, you have a very high chance of critically hitting on pretty much every attack, and at least you should be quite reliable at getting at least one critical hit every turn, which is what you need to trigger your crowd control effects, and also trigger your bonus action attack from Great Weapon Master. Reckless Attack gives us advantage for free, so it's amazing on this character. At character level 8, we're going to take our third level of Barbarian, because a Barbarian subclass can give us even more critical hits, which means even more laughing and frightened and terrified and helpless enemies. we're going to, as our subclass, take Wild Heart Barbarian, and the bestial heart that we're going to take is Tiger Heart Barbarian. This means that every attack we can hit up to 3 enemies with the Tiger's Bloodlust wide swing, because we'll be able to attack in a 7-foot cone. And each of those enemies is a potential for a critical hit. Each of those enemies is a potential for a fear from Great Old One Warlock. Each of those enemies is a potential for laughter from the Clown Hammer. So all of those enemies can have to make saving throws. They also will all be bleeding, which of course is very good against some kinds of enemies and can let you apply even more dangerous effects to them because they'll have disadvantage on con saves. So this character debuffs enemies dramatically, but also is going to hit a lot of them and do a lot of damage. It also makes you that much more likely to trigger Great Weapon Master by either killing enemies or critically hitting and getting a bonus action attack. Now you can't make the Tiger's Bloodlust wide swing as a bonus action, it's just its own attack. But it will still just make it that much more likely that you trigger that, so this character's action economy becomes even more efficient when you're hitting this many enemies per turn. It will very frequently in combat make effectively 8 to 10 attacks in a given turn because of hasted actions, bonus action attacks, wide swings from Tiger's Bloodlust. So you will be able to lock down large groups of enemies as well as defeating single enemies by locking them down with your incredible crowd control. Alright, character level 9. We're going to take our 4th level of Barbarian in order to get our 2nd feat, and the feat that we're going to take is an ability improvement to our Charisma. Remember that we've had Ethel's Hair, so we're going to have 20 Charisma at this point. If you didn't use Ethel's Hair, 18 Charisma is still fine. And if you find you're really struggling with initiative on this character, you can take Alert instead of an ability improvement here. For example, if the rest of your party really needs the initiative gear that you have available, then you might be able to fit Alert in instead of the ability improvement. Because this character is making so many of its attacks just fishing for critical hits, it doesn't really matter what our hit bonus is, so you can get away with lower attributes, but the save DC from having higher charisma is really important, so I recommend taking the ability improvement, and then we'll just boost our initiative a little bit with initiative gear to get to a +5 or so, where we're reliably beating most enemies in the game. At character level 10, the build will actually differ if you are playing on Tactician mode or lower or on Honor mode. At level 10, at Barbarian level 5 on Tactician mode or below, you get extra attack, and on lower difficulties, the extra attack feature from just getting it from a class like Barbarian, and the extra attack feature from Pact of the Blade Warlock stack, giving you a 3rd attack in a round. So if you're playing on not Honor mode, any difficulty level below Honor mode, take a 5th level of Barbarian so that you get 3 attacks in a round. Obviously, a 3rd attack in a round is better than what any other class would give us, so very powerful to be able to do that if you're playing on a lower difficulty level. On Honor mode, though, the extra attack from Barbarian level 5 does not stack with Pact of the Blade Warlock, so we don't want to take that, and instead are going to multi-class yet again and pick up Paladin levels. Remember that we have all of these Warlock spell slots. We have 3rd level Warlock spell slots that come back on a short rest, and so we can use those to smite. This character can then get incredible damage because we are critically hitting very frequently. Smite damage gets doubled when we critical hit, and we're getting those Warlock spell slots back whenever we short rest. You can also smite while raging. Although it is sort of a spell cast, it works just fine while you're raging, so that's a way to use our Warlock spell slots while in rage without having to cast or concentrate on a spell. For our Paladin subclass, honestly, this build is thematically pretty evil, so you'll probably end up breaking your oath very, very early. If you don't think that you're going to break your oath, then the best one to take is Oath of the Ancients, because healing Radiance is very useful and just gives you a pretty nice bonus to your party. Oath of the Ancients, I think, is generally speaking the best for a 2-level dip, but any of the 3 Paladin oaths work fine. Oath of Vengeance is probably the most thematic, but realistically, this character's gonna break its oath, so you'll end up as an Oathbreaker Paladin, and which oath you actually selected won't matter that much. The real benefit, of course, of Paladin, though, is going to be at Paladin level 2, which we get where we get to pick up Divine Smite. This is going to let us use our Paladin spell slots as well as our Warlock spell slots, and you want to put these on React whenever you critically hit, and activate them whenever you critically hit, which should be very reliably and very frequently, in order to make sure that you're always doubling your smite damage. This gives this character incredible melee burst damage, in addition to the very solid sustained melee damage that you're doing, just as a great weapon fighter attacking with Rage and Reckless Attack and Tiger's Bloodlust. So you can burst down dangerous enemies, anyone that you can't lock down with Fear or Laughter. You can burst down with Smites, and of course, any enemies that you just need to take care of while they are currently locked down, you can kill that much quicker. The Smites give us incredible burst damage, melee sustained damage, and crowd control, so this character really does everything. For our fighting style here, of course, we are going to take Great Weapon Fighting, since we're a Great Weapon Fighting character. That is going to increase our damage output on our weapon damage dramatically. You could also take Defense if you are finding that your armor class is too low, but this character shouldn't get hit a lot because most enemies that you face are going to be lying helplessly on the ground, rolling around laughing, and unable to fight back. For our spell preparation here, the most important one to prepare is going to be Command. This character has 20 Charisma if you've used Ethel's Hair, so you're very good at commanding enemies, and are able to just stop them from doing anything, so Command is going to be excellent. And Thunderous Smite can be stacked on top of your normal smites. You can use both Thunderous Smite and a normal smite in a round in order to do even more burst damage if you need additional burst damage. Bless is fine. You can prepare Bless just to make yourself more likely to hit, though remember hit bonuses are less useful on this character. Still useful, but less useful because of most of our hits are going to be critical, so it won't matter what our bonuses are anyways. And then you just take sort of situational spells that might come up. Most of our spell slots are going to be used for smites, so these won't matter, but if you have these sorts of situational spells in your back pocket, in case you really need them in an emergency, then you can use like Protection from Evil and Good or something. But these last spell preparations won't matter. The most important one is going to be Command. Finally, at character level 12, you actually again have a lot of options as to which level we take. You can get additional class features from taking a 3rd level in Paladin. If you took Oath of Vengeance Paladin, that's another way to gain advantage on all of your attacks, is the Vow of Enmity, so that could be a really useful thing to take a 3rd level of Paladin. You could get fast movement from taking a 5th level of Barbarian, and if you're on Tactician mode or lower, you'll already have your 5th level of Barbarian for extra attack. But I think that best overall is just taking the 6th level of Warlock, because we get to learn another spell, and we get Entropic Ward. There's a bunch of dangerous ranged attacks in Act 3 that we really do want to stop enemies from hitting us with, so we can either use Darkness for this, or we can use Entropic Ward. This just gives us a good reaction that this character mostly doesn't have great uses for its reaction, so I just like taking the 6th level of Warlock here, but honestly the last level of this build is mostly for taste, unless you're on lower difficulties, in which case it should be the 5th level of Barbarian for sure. For our spell selection here, you can go back and take a utility spell like Misty Step or Invisibility, something like that. You can take Hypnotic Pattern, but let's just grab Tasha's Hideous Laughter just because the flavor of the character is based around Hideous Laughter, so it makes sense for the character to be able to pick it up. Alright, my friends, that is the build for the Evil Clown, dishing out critical hits, fear off of critical hits, incredible damage in melee combat, and powerful utility casting. But of course this character is based around some item combinations, and benefits very strongly from some items and illithid powers, so let's talk about those. 4 items for this character. The endgame state of this character is based around a specific item combination. Now, obviously, it's a powerful character up until the point where you get this item, but for the most power from this character and for the Evil Clown theme to come online, we need a specific weapon available in Act 3, and that is the Clown Hammer. The Clown Hammer is available from the Circus in Act 3, and whenever you critically hit with this weapon, you and the enemy that you crit have to make a DC 17 Wisdom save, or be affected by fits of laughter, basically receiving the effect of the Tasha's Hideous Laughter spell, which completely disables the enemy who fails against it. DC 17 is pretty good for a weapon effect that happens every single time you critically hit with a weapon. And so the Clown Hammer will constantly be disabling enemies. Importantly, because this is Tasha's Hideous Laughter also, there's a lot of honor mode enemies that are immune to other disabling effects that for whatever reason are not immune to Hideous Laughter, so even some of the most dangerous enemies in the game can be disabled if you critically hit them and they fail the save against the Hideous Laughter spell. However, of course, there's a downside to this weapon. Both the target and the attacker have to make that saving throw. We could try to boost our wisdom save as high as possible, but there is in fact a way around this available in the same location, and that is the face painting kit. When you have painted your face like a clown, you have the clown face paint effect. It doesn't take up an elixir slot or anything, you can just always have this, and you're unaffected by Hideous Laughter. It makes you immune to the effect of the Clown Hammer completely, preventing you from having to make the wisdom save. So you go around with your face painted like a clown, and you bonk people with the Clown Hammer, getting critical hits, and then they have to make the save against the Hideous Laughter, and you don't. So remember when I said the clown face paint was not just a joke, but an integral part of the build? It really is, and it's what makes this item actually devastatingly powerful in a build that's built around it. Of course, we then want to optimize that even further by getting more frequent critical hits, so the other important thing that this build needs is items that boost your chance at critically hitting. Saravak's Horned Helmet gives you a bonus chance to critical hit, having the Dead Shot equipped as your bow gives you a bonus chance to critical hit, and of course, just takes up your bow slot. You don't need to actually be attacking with the weapon to do that, so it's particularly good there. Any other items that increase your chance to critically hit, or the Elixir of Viciousness that reduces the number you need to roll a crit, are very helpful for this build as well. You can easily get it down to 16 or 15 if you're obscured with the Shadeslayer cloak, and then you can boost it even further with some story events if you're the Dark Urge. So this character can have a very high chance of critically hitting, and every time you critically hit, enemies have to make a save against the fear and against the laughter. Other great items for this character, of course, we want boosts to our initiative, and we're a reasonably high dexterity character, so I'm going to recommend the Yuan-Ti Scale Mail. It also lets you use your full dexterity for armor class, so you can have decent, if not exceptional, armor class when using this armor suit. Of course, any medium armor is a totally reasonable pick for this character, so this one is available basically whatever you happen to need, but the bonus to initiative rolls is very important, and any other item that you can get that boosts your initiative rolls will be very helpful to this character as well. With 16 initiative and a couple boosts, you can reliably win, and if you go first, then enemies will be unable to react since they'll be writhing on the ground laughing and unable to fight back against you. We also, of course, want items that let us guarantee critical hits, like the Killer's Sweetheart Ring, giving us a guaranteed critical hit, and we can get at least one more guaranteed crit per long rest from Luck of the Far Realms as an Illithid power, so we should have multiple of those. We can also add even more power to our crowd control combination on attacks with another cool item combo that this character uses very well. If we use the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, we can't slip on ice surfaces, so we can use that in combination with the Snowburst Ring that creates an ice surface whenever we deal cold damage, and the Drakethroat Glaive to enchant our Clown Hammer with cold damage. So we can use Draconic Elemental Weapon to enchant our Clown Hammer for an additional d4 cold damage and bonus chance to hit. Then when we hit them with the Clown Hammer, it's going to make a 15-foot circle of ice from the Snowburst Ring, causing enemies to fall over. Enemies who are prone and frightened from the Great Old One Warlock have 0 movement speed, and so can't get back up from prone and are effectively stunned as well. So this is going to increase our ability to lock enemies out even further if you want to use the ice combination with this character as well. You need the Disintegrating Nightwalker boots in order to make yourself immune to your own ice surfaces, otherwise you yourself will fall over frequently. But with those 3 items, you add another devastating bit of power to your arsenal. For our glove slot, we can either just do any glove that increases your damage, like the Helldust gloves, of course, are going to be excellent for this character. We're also very good at using the gloves of dexterity. That would let us get higher constitution and wisdom, because we could move our dexterity points from dexterity into con and wisdom, and then get even higher armor class and initiative. So if you don't have another character that needs them, the Gloves of Dex are really good on this character as well. Finally, of course, this character is a character that is both making weapon attacks and has access to command. So you will do very well with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel and Helmet of Arcane Acuity to build Arcane Acuity stacks and then command enemies to fall over. Yet another way that this character can make enemies fall over, though of course this item combo may be more powerful on a Swordbard Archer if you have one of those in your party, but this character also uses this incredibly powerful item combination extremely well to build up Arcane Acuity stacks, increasing our spell save DCs, and then cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action, in this case, command that we get from our Paladin levels, to cause all of our enemies in an encounter to fall over without effectively getting a saving throw. Finally, this character is excellent at using illithid powers. In particular, Luck of the Far Realms is amazing for this character because we want critical hits, so using Luck of the Far Realms is very, very good. And Favorable Beginnings means that we are better at being a party face and are going to hit our spells more often. These are the two most important ones, but this character benefits from every illithid power because these use our charisma for their save DC, and also the ones that trigger off of hitting with weapon attacks is something this character will be doing frequently, so we're very good at using those as well, and benefit a lot from them. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the evil clown, and I hope that you have fun clowning on your enemies and causing them to be struck with fits of laughter to the point where they are unable to fight back against you, terrified and rolling around laughing helplessly as you slaughter them. I really wish I'd done this build for Halloween because it would have been really thematic there. But if you've ever wanted to be an evil clown in Baldur's Gate, this is the perfect opportunity. As always, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.